Yes, I was over here so deep into it, my camera stopped recording, but my battery is still going strong. Thank God. Okay, boys, I'm gonna try to hurry up. Because I swear there's a point, and all of this will come up later, like I said, throughout the video series. So it is worth it to me to say all of this, but like I'm gonna try to like speed through it. Anyway, so he wrote back that the people were stupid, that they would be perfect for enslavement. That's where I left off. And yeah, long story short, we all, or many of us know, they began to enslave. They began to infect and rape and pillage and slave their way across the island. And when the Carib people figured out that that's what their intentions were, they killed all of them. They killed the men that Christopher Raggedy Columbus left behind. So when Christopher Raggedy Columbus came back and found his men dead, he wrote back to the Parliament letting them know, okay, these people are not friendly. Even though our people were friendly, our people welcomed them. But see, what they understood was that they were embarking on a whole new group of people, a whole new world. That's why it is called the New World. You can't talk about the New World without talking about the Caribbean, because it all started with my people. Okay, it all started on my island. It all started with us. It all started with us and Christopher Raggedy Columbus. When they came over, and another thing that he wrote back that I thought was so interesting is that on I guess not along the coast of the island of Ayiti, along the coast of a different island. I think it was maybe Martinique, but I'm not sure. But excuse me, let me not. Christopher Raggedy Columbus and his men came across a fleet when they were approaching an island to colonize and destabilize. They encountered a fleet of women. There were Carib women, of course, who defended the territory, and one of the with bows and arrows and everything, and shot them down and made them like go away. And one of the things that he wrote back was that he was very surprised to find that there were entire communities across the Caribbean where the women were the leaders, where the women were defenders, where the women were warriors, where the women were in the position essentially that the men were in. Do not mind me. The women were in positions that the men were in over in Europe. So in other words, that he had never encountered a matriarchal society before. And he was writing back, or he wrote back, excuse me, to the Parliament that he found that surprising, that the men were there, but that the men were essentially like honoring the women. He didn't say it like honoring, like more like yielding and submitting and subjugated, but they were not subjugated. Out before, this was a patriarchal world. This was a matriarchal world. That's what people don't understand, but that is for a whole nother time. Honestly, it's a whole nother thing. So anywho, like I said, go back or if you have the time, and if you're curious, and especially if you're Caribbean, please go read just some of the things that Christopher Columbus wrote back. Another thing that I think is interesting is how he described our people, because he described our people as having straight hair. And something that's interesting to me is straight hair, Euro texture straight hair did not exist until several thousands of years ago. But our indigenous people have existed for hundreds of thousands of years. And so the straight hair, like I think that there's a misrepresentation of what the indigenous Americans look like, and I think it is on purpose. They show us these like basically white people with a tan and like with straight hair, and they don't show us the images and the depictions of the indigenous Americans like from before then. And it's because if you can find those images, what you'll see, you're not going to see people, you'll see people with straight hair, but you'll also see people not, you'll see people with straight hair either way. But the straight, what I want you to pay attention to is the texture of the straight hair. People are so misinformed about us indigenous people, so misinformed. Our hair texture can take on any, and by our I mean indigenous people, those of us with like I call it divine textured hair, because it is the hair of the divine. It's the hair, they said Jesus had hair like wool. who has hair like wool. It's not the Caucasians, right? Our hair is divine textured hair. And the indigenous people, like I said, everywhere in the world have that divine textured hair. And it can be, my hair can take on every texture, and I don't have to use heat. I don't have to use, I literally can put my hair in braids and make my hair straight when I take it down. I can take my hair and stand it up. It defies gravity. There's not many things on the planet that defy gravity, yet we are literally born with a physical characteristic that defies gravity. We are remarkable and exceptional people, and I think the Black Americans in particular really need to learn more about who they are and wake up and come out from that like race spell. But whatever, that's for a whole nother time. And as for the depiction of who the indigenous Americans are, I just wanted to say that because every single time I saw those pictures, I was like, that's not accurate. There's no way that that's accurate. The indigenous people were deeply melanated beings, and they make it seem like the indigenous Americans, like people think that if you are essentially like with a lighter brown complexion, right? Like I guess like the color of my hand. And then if you have like straight hair, and especially if you're like Caribbean and you meet that description, that you are quote unquote Indio and you are what an Indio looks like. No, I am what an indigenous American looks like. That's what I understand. And I just had to mention the tidbit about him describing our people as yes, brown, but like having straight hair. That doesn't mean that they have straight like white people hair, because our hair can naturally be straight as well. And if you know Caribbean people, like I said, our hair texture, when we put our hair in braids or we just stretch our hair out, our hair looks straight. It's just not the same as like, you know, white people or Euro texture straight hair. That may not make sense to like some people, but to the Caribbean people who are on the same like intellectual level as me, I think it'll make sense. It's just I just want to drop some Easter eggs there because we are being lied to on purpose. And I just know. I just know. And when you know, like the more information you find, like the more you realize like it's just very diabolical what's going on. And like there is truly there's a strong force, I'll call it, that wants us, the true divine people, the true indigenous people, to think of ourselves as like trash, think of ourselves as these like everything that we are not. Everything that we are not, and to think of to not realize we are the beginning. We are the beginning. And when they show us these depictions and they call us all this stuff, no, you need to do the research on your own. But anywho, oh my gosh, I'm looking at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so long to edit. But whatever, I'm sure it'll be fine. So anywho, Christopher Columbus, he stumbles across our island. And so yes, start beginning 1500s. Essentially, slavery is established throughout the Caribbean, colony by colony, country by country, nation by nation, island by island, basically. And so that's happening all throughout the 1500s. I'm just gonna like quickly try to go through this to connect it to the part where I enter the story, you know. So that's happening all throughout the 1500s. The French come over. Excuse me, let me backtrack. The Spaniards come over to the island. The French come over to the islands. The Portuguese come over. The Dutch come over. The British come over. All the colonizers, right? It's a colonizer party. All the colonizers come over. All the conquistadores come over and start raping and pillaging and enslaving our people, enslaving their way across our territory. And one way you know Christopher Columbus didn't stumble over there is because if you check the timeline, around the same time that Christopher Columbus came over to my parents' island, the island of Ayiti, his partner Hernando de Soto was ransacking and ravaging his way all throughout Central America. and all throughout South America. Hernando de Soto and his partner stumbled, and their men, their raggedy men, stumbled across the Inca Empire. So if it was such an accident that Christopher Columbus stumbled, if he just got there by accident, why didn't he turn around? And why did more of his men come over to not just the Caribbean islands, but to the Americas? Why did they come to the Americas with that same vengeance and with that same mission? Essentially, like, that's how you know it wasn't an accident. That's how you know it was what I believe was a coordinated attack. Like I said, just look at the timeline. And then Hernando de Soto, after the Inca Empire had fallen, if you will. What I understand, I know Caribbean history like way more than, like, South American, even though that's where we're from, and the other history. So just from what I recall, I believe that the brothers of the empire were already at odds. They were already at war with each other. But when Hernando de Soto and his partner came, like, they helped to destabilize that somehow, some way, if I remember correctly. Like, they infiltrated and then, like, established their presence there. And then afterwards they returned to Europe. And then Hernando de Soto, he married his partner's daughter. And then after he finished, assaulting the women, the children, raping their way, enslaving their way, and pillaging, destroying, infecting, just destroying and destabilizing everything, country by country, territory by territory. They decide, oh, let's go to Europe, let's rest our feet for a little while, but oh, we can't rest for too long, because then they went back to the Americas. They came back to the Americas, and they came to Florida. And he continued to do the same thing all throughout Florida that he did all throughout Central and South America. And he did that throughout Florida. He did that throughout Georgia. I believe he got as far as Mississippi. And that's why if you search up Hernando de Soto and you search up Mississippi, you're going to find that there's a landmark dedicated to Hernando, raggedy piece of Hijo de Soto. You're going to find that. And see, this is what's so raggedy about this world, and so questionable and disgusting about this world, and specifically in this country. That in this country, after you've raped and infected and destabilized, you've murdered your way across nations. Only in this country, and I guess in the Western world, will you get a plaque and a landmark dedicated to you. And I believe it's still up to this very day. If the history, Hernando de Soto is praised as if him and Christopher Columbus, as if that's anything to praise. Only a demon would praise something like that. And look at how long it took them in the United States to finally change Christopher Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Why was he ever given a day in the first place? And why did it take this long for them to finally acknowledge he was never something? Because I don't know if that's a person really or someone really, but he was never something to be praised in the first place. It's disgusting. It's diabolical, actually, and degenerate. But anyway. So, like I said, in my humble opinion, they didn't stumble here. It was a coordinated attack, and the other colonizers joined in on this coordinated attack on the Caribbeans, on the Caribbean islands. So the island of Ayiti, where my parents are from, was taken over by the Spaniards and the French. At one point in time, Ayiti or Haiti did own the whole island, and then there's all this history. I'm not going to get into it. As we know. 2/3 of the island is occupied or considered to be the Dominican Republic, and then the other remaining third on the western side is what is called Ayiti, or what is called Haiti, the country of Haiti, right? So throughout the 1500s, the Spaniards, the French, they're engaging in slavery and colonization of the people there. It is documented, and I think it is very interesting that this part isn't said out loud, and I think it goes back to what I was saying before, but it is documented. I remember reading this in high school, that the colonizers, the conquistadores, did not know, the French and the Spaniards, they could not tell the Caribbean people, the indigenous Caribs, from the Africans when they shaved their heads. That tells you, like I said, the indigenous people, everywhere they went, we are the same. We looked the same. We're not exactly the same, but we looked the same. We had similar features, essentially. Our wide nostrils, which help us breathe better, are better. Our darker eyes, our deeply melanated hues, our different shades of brown to protect us from the sun. That's why we glow. I don't burn in the sun. I glow. I glow in the light. I glow in the sun. I do not burn. Right? Our melanin is why we do not burn. Our melanin is to protect us. Your melanin is literally a superpower. I just learned something earlier this year. Melanin is a superconductor. I gotta go back to that video because that is interesting to me. Again, we were born amazing. They just don't want you to think that. Your melanin is a superpower. Your hair defies gravity. We are the indigenous people. It's just, I have to keep saying it because you won't learn these things if you just go to public school here and you just read what they write in the textbooks. I didn't learn all this stuff from just reading the textbooks. I learned all this stuff because starting in the 6th grade, when I had access to the computer lab, that's where I used to go to avoid getting bullied, actually. To avoid getting bullied, I would go to the computer lab and I would just research because I had met my parents which I'll get into later, but I had met my parents and I wanted to understand like where I come from, who they come from. Like I wanted to know. I didn't want to just whenever we got to like the history part of class or with the subject of history, we didn't learn about like the Caribbean. I was like waiting for the part where we learned about my people. And we didn't learn, and I understand this because this is not like that country, but yeah, or this is not the Caribbean, but anywho, you're not going to learn these things like from just reading U.S. textbooks. You're going to have to do your own research, and if you're a Caribbean person, if you're a brown-skinned person who is foreign, or if you're a Black American, you should be reading and you should be like looking for and you should have questions and you should be searching for the answers yourself instead of waiting for people who are not you to tell you who you are and where you come from. Like, no. Anywho, I keep on going on tangents, y'all. I knew this was gonna be long, and I said it, but anywho, okay. Let me see if I can remember like where I left off. So, the So the French people and the Spaniard people, the French and the Spaniards could not tell the difference. I remember now, because if I didn't remember fast enough, I was just gonna edit this part. I might still edit this part. But the French and the Spaniards, they couldn't tell the difference between the Africans and the Caribbeans, because when they shaved our hair, specifically, it's documented that when they shaved our hair, they couldn't tell the difference. They couldn't tell who was who. That's how you know we're very similar. But yes, we were, and that's how you know that we never got. We were never like entirely killed off. Now I remember why I brought that up, because that's another misconception, that we were like all killed, that the Caribbeans were all killed off. No, the Caribbeans escaped into like the mountains. The Caribbeans went back to South America, where we're from, where we still are, literally. Like, wasn't there just an article that came out earlier this year about one of the tribes people coming out to send a warning to the world about what's coming, and went back into hiding, because that's what our people did when the colonizers came. They went into hiding, right? So they went into the mountains, but they also went back to South America. We've never been extinct. And I knew that even when I was in that computer lab in 6th grade reading that. But what's interesting is the confirmation that I got later on. When I was in high school, there was this study I came across, and it was announced like that a team of scientists had conducted some research, and they tested like the ancestry of of Caribbeans, but primarily Puerto Ricans. And they found that like your average Caribbean person has like anywhere between like 20 to 30% indigenous ancestry, if I remember correctly. Those were the percentages. But yeah, like around like 20 to 30%. And they were like surprised and they were fascinated. And I'm like, well, duh. And so essentially the findings was that, oh, the indigenous Caribs are not extinct after all, and that their genealogy, that the genealogy of the indigenous Caribs lives on today. And I'm like, of course, like literally I was reading that in high school and I'm like, well, of course, like I'm right here. We're right here. We've always been right here, you know? But the misconception is that, and the propaganda is that everyone who's dark skinned is an African, and that, oh, the majority of the brown skinned people kept their bloodlines pure, that the majority of us who are brown skinned are like either purely African or purely Indio, like purely indigenous. That is ridiculous. 1490, you know how long ago 1492 was? From 1492, these colonizers came over and forced their way. They forced themselves inside of the people, inside of the women, and forced the people to procreate in order to keep creating people who would be enslaved. What people in that predicament were able to choose to keep their bloodline purely African and keep their, oh no, don't assault me, I want to keep my bloodline African. What? Oh no, I want to keep my bloodline. They didn't have that choice. It is literally documented that the Africans and the Caribbeans were enslaved together. They were assaulted together. They procreated as well. There's even like a whole system, like an identification system that I think it's like specific to the Dominican Republic, but a lot of the terms are used like across Latin America, or they were used across Latin America. But like the Dominican Republic had like all these terms for people who were like for example, if you were Chinese and you were Caribbean, then you were called something in particular. So like not just a mestizo, but a specific kind of mestizo, which means you're specifically Chinese and specifically Caribbean or indigenous. And then if you're indigenous and Caribbean and like French, or indigenous Caribbean and Spanish, they had a specific word for you. So even that identification system that was in use for years, even that lets you know that there was a presence of the Caribbean people even after 1492, that we didn't go extinct, right? Because that's why someone who was Chinese and Carib was called something specific. That's why they made sure to mention us in this chart, or mention that you're specifically Carib or part Carib in this chart. So in other words, if we all went extinct, they wouldn't have a term for someone who's Carib and Chinese, if that makes sense. You know, I really hope all this makes sense. Anywho, I just wanted to share, like, that's another misconception. And it's because a lot of this stuff, I guess people really don't know. And I'm just so sick and tired of the stupidity and the ignorance, especially when it's coupled with people trying to tell you about yourself and you don't even know where you are from and like who you are. It's weird. I don't ever pick up the phone or go into a conversation and try to tell like people who are Southeast Asian that they're all the same. Like I don't even care enough, truth be told. I'm trying to figure out my people and my history and all this other stuff. I'm trying to pay all my bills that I do by myself. Like I don't have the audacity and like the nerve to try to insist that, like, I don't know, Sri Lankans and Bangladeshi people are the same and da da da. And yet I, like, just as recently as a few months ago, this Black American said to me, there's no difference between Caribbeans and Black Americans. Like, y'all were slaves too. Like, all y'all want to just claim to be French, or y'all want to claim to be part Arab. Y'all just want to be extravagant. And I'm like, really? That's just so sad that, like, for that to be anyone's mindset, like for Black American people to have, those who do, of course, for them to have that mindset. Like, he literally said to me, there's no difference between Caribbeans and Black Americans. We were slaves too. That's it. And claiming anything else, like to be anything other than African, you just want to be extravagant. But notice how they don't say to the white Puerto Rican girl who says that who's clearly is white, but who says that she's like indigenous. They don't say, oh, she wants to be extravagant because she's claiming to be indigenous, although she looks like a colonizer. They don't say that they're trying to be extravagant. They just respect their ethnic identity. They allow, like, it's interesting. Black American people can understand like the nuance of like white people having a race and having an ethnicity, like a white person who's like, I'm not white, I'm Italian. They'll be like, oh, she not white, she Italian. Oh, she not white, she's Lebanese. But then when it's a brown skinned person, they don't seem to understand. It's like, no, we get it that you're like, we get it, you're French Caribbean, but you're African. We get it, you're black though, you're black. And it's like they can't understand, if you're brown skin, how you can look like this, how you could look like them, but be of a different ethnicity. It's weird to me. And again, that's why I'm taking so much time. I know people are probably, if I even publish this and I like allow all of this to be published instead of edited out, people are probably gonna be like, girl, get to the part where your parents come in. I'm about to. Trust me, I'm about to. And it's all going to connect, like I said. Anywho, so I'll just jump ahead. 1500s enslavement is happening. You could go look into the history if you know, yeah, you could look into the history. Enter the 1600s now. The African people are being brought to North America as well. So slavery is happening all throughout the Americas. Colonization is happening all throughout the Americas now, throughout the 1500s and the 1600s and the 1700s. Boom, here come the 1800s. At the start of the 1800s, I believe it is 1804. At the start of the 1800s, that is when my people, the Ayitian people on the west side of the island, the Haitian people, choose to revolt. I'm gonna do one more like disclaimer before I get on to the timeline. Because I just have to say this as well. If you are Dominican, if you are Haitian, you are the same people. We are literally this. As someone who is Dominican Haitian, we're literally the same people. And like I said, it is because the people on the east side of the island, the side that's called the Dominican Republic, the indigenous people on the eastern side were the same indigenous people on the west side. The whole island was called Ayiti. The east side was referred to as Quisqueya, right? But the whole island was, and it's because the island is split by a river. So if someone's like, oh, where are you? Like, are you on this side or are you on like on Quisqueya? That doesn't mean that you're like in a different country. Literally, the island of Ayiti has like 7 or 8 islands. Like 3, I think, are on Ayiti side, Haiti side, and then the other 4 are on the Dominican side. Each of those islands have a different name. But does that mean that they're a part of a different country? No, it's like all those islands belong to the same country. So even though, let's say, one island is called, I don't know, tote, like a bag. Let's say one of the islands is called tote or tote, right? But the island of Tote is a part of the island of Ayiti. So if you're on Tote or you're from the island of Tote, it doesn't mean that you're not an Haitian. It doesn't mean you're not Haitian. It means that you're a Haitian who was born on the island of Tote, which is a part of the entire like country, the entire nation. So that's just another misconception. And again, I think it's on purpose, truth be told, to create so that that division exists. Because there's so much racism, so much colorism, featureism, and division amongst the Dominicans and Haitians. And literally, we are the same people. Of all the Caribbeans and of all the Caribbean Latinos, the Dominicans and the Haitians, we're literally like the same. Like I would say genetically, we are probably the closest compared to everyone else. And it's because we're Haitian on both sides. Like I said, the indigenous part, the Dominicans are like, soy indio. Well, when you claim to be Indio, you're claiming to be Haitian because the indigenous people were not Tainos. We speak Taino, right? But we called ourselves Haitians because we were from the island of Ayiti. I just want to let that be known because there's just this stupid division and it's just useless, but it is so real. Like literally, like it's true. The Dominican people, and I get to say this. The Dominican people oftentimes like are just as racist. And I mean, honestly, a lot of the white Hispanics and the white Latinos who come from like the Caribbean, who come from Central and South America, they're literally the same racist people as the white Americans. That's why what's happening in the United States, they did it to themselves. They voted, they thought that their whiteness would save them because of the racism. But anyway, I'm gonna just skate past that one as well. Okay, 1800s, please keep up with me. 1800s, right? So the 1800s, at the start of the 1800s, my people, the Ayitian people on the west side of the island, because the Ayitians on the east side are asleep, the Dominicans are asleep, and they have already, you know, capitulated. The Spaniards and the U.S. have always been in cahoots. That's why, if you notice, there's hardly any there's never been really like bad messaging or propaganda about the Spaniards, right? Check the world history and you see why. Check it. Anywho, so on the western side of the island, the Ayitian people finally result at the top of the 1800s. They realize all that Jesus, you know, all that Christianity that they introduced, it's not working, right? Before 1492, our people did not know anything about Jesus, did not know anything about Christianity, Catholicism, none of that. Our people prayed to Zemis, Zemis, Z-E-M-I-S, Z-E-M-I. That's what our gods were called, a semi. So when you search up semis and you see those little figures and stuff, those are the gods. That was the spirituality that existed before Christopher Raggedy Columbus, before the Europeans came. And like I said, they change your history, they change your name, they change your understanding of yourself everywhere that they go. That's what they do, and it's for a reason.
In an instant, anatomy all I see, and the lights get out, and the lights get out, and the lights get